Hello and welcome. This is Space Debris Impact and Solutions by Erica Anderson. First off, what is space debris, or space junk as some of us call it? It is any piece of machinery or debris that is left in space by humans. Now, the size of the debris will vary in size from small to large, and a majority of the debris is man-made. Specifically, some examples are dead satellites that have been left behind by failed missions, or small bits of paint from space shuttles or satellites. There are currently 2,000 active satellites, but over 3,000 dead ones still out in our orbit. There are about 30,000 plus pieces of space debris or junk currently in our space, and some of that debris has even been left on the moon. Now, what are the significant problems that space debris causes us? Well, space debris poses a huge risk to other satellites and objects in our space and in our orbit. New pieces of junk can be created by collisions of other pieces of space junk, or space junk colliding with current satellites or colliding with the International Space Station. There are a lot of issues there because space junk is so unpredictable. The faster these pieces are traveling, the bigger the threats they pose. Because the faster something travels, the harder it's going to hit something else, the bigger the impact is going to be. Consider a car collision, if you will. The faster the car is moving, the bigger, the worse, the more damaging that collision is going to be. The issues that are going to come from these collisions or the space debris is that it's going to put a halt or a slowdown on exploration missions, and it's going to affect life on our Earth. Whether we realize it or not, it's going to affect us some way, somehow. It even has affected us in some places. We just aren't fully aware of it. Now, something to consider is, well, if there's a problem, how are we going to fix it? Well, there's a whole slew of different solutions, but which ones are going to work and which ones aren't going to work? Here is our list of solutions to our space junk problem. We can use nets, we could use laser blasts, harpoons, tethers and solar sails, or garbage gathering robotic arms. Now, all of these have the possibility to be made and to be used, but each one comes with their pros and their cons. We're going to explore three of the following solutions a bit more in depth: nets, laser blasts, and gathering garbage robotic arms. Here I have is an image of, well, somewhat metaphorical image on our left of what the space debris looks like, or what it could possibly look like. It's not very realistic, but it is a possibility. If you look closely, you can see some keyboards, some mouses, other pieces of metal, and it just looks like a whole bunch of electronic junk, if you will, floating around a planet, specifically our planet. Now, is this actually what it looks like? No. But is there stuff like this floating around us in our space and causing issues? Absolutely. On the right-hand side shows you how the more technology progresses, so does the amount of space junk. And by the year of 2030, who knows what our orbit or our planet will actually look like. A beautiful satellite image of the planet may not even be able to be seen because of the amount of space junk clouding our atmosphere and our orbit. But we never know. So let's dive in deeper into these solutions, starting with solution one, nets. Now, there are pros and cons to every solution, and I'm going to explore them with you here. So the pros of the nets is that it doesn't require a propellant to keep the net going. It'll just go off of inertia. It is extremely cost effective because we can use solar energy. Being in space, we have a direct line to the sun. And these nets can travel on any low orbit launch, meaning that they can go up to space a lot quicker than, say, a giant, sail or laser. The cons, however, are tricky maneuvering of this net to make sure it gathers the junk. Absolutely. Making sure that this net isn't just traveling collecting nothing is very important. And if something does go wrong with the net and we can't not retrieve it, it's going to create more junk, therefore not helping the problem. The second solution that we are going to talk about is laser blasts. Now, these laser blasts have some pros, but have some serious cons. So, first thing is it's effective on small objects. Okay, we can launch it at smaller objects that might slip through a net, but it could also hit larger objects and create more junk. If it hits the junk, it can deorbit it, which is also a very big pro. However, ground-based lasers need a very strong power beam to reach the outer space orbits that we need it to. And it also poses issues to other countries, suggesting anti-satellite military technologies, which puts everybody on edge. And the last solution that we're going to discuss before we discuss which one is the most plausible that science supports. So the last one is garbage gathering robotic arms. Now the pros of this is that a spacecraft can carry these robots and they are cheap. However, the biggest problem is that they don't travel well and cannot be compressed. Therefore, getting them to outer space is going to be the biggest issue. That isn't where the issue should lie. So let's talk about what research thinks and what science thinks. Cleaning up the space junk is very, very possible. However, it's going to be a lot of trial and error. There is this satellite called Remove Debris. It is a project that is still in its testing phase, but is looking very promising. This satellite successfully launched a net and trapped a piece of space debris that was orbiting around the Earth. This is huge in the realm of science because the complexity of using a net in space to capture pieces of debris takes many, many years of planning, lots of time engineering and creating coordinations. Although there is still a lot of work to be done, it is showing that it has been very successful. And this is very exciting in terms of cleaning up our space and cleaning up our orbit and looking for a brighter future. Now, what does this mean the best solution is and why should we care? Well, the best option here is the nets. The nets are our best option. How do these nets work? Well, they're launched into the lower Earth orbit where it is released by a satellite using electricity. It wraps around pieces of debris where the object is then removed from the orbit, where it will either burn up in the atmosphere or if it is too large, we can maneuver it to drop it into the ocean, therefore not harming any civilian life. And if it's dropped into the ocean, long term, it could develop artificial coral reefs, which is also a pro. Now, why should we care? Well, this topic of the Kessler syndrome. Now, this idea was proposed by David Kessler in 1978. He said, and I quote, if there was too much space junk in orbit, it could result in a chain reaction where more and more objects collide, creating new space junk in the process, to the point where Earth's orbit could be unstable. Now, this situation could be very extreme. However, some experts worry that a variant like this could be a problem someday. And the more technology advances and the more we send up and the more we use, the more likely this problem is going to happen. So Kessler syndrome is a serious thing that we need to consider. And here is a last few images just to keep you thinking. The image on the right is an example of what a net would look like, grabbing a piece of space junk or space debris, keeping it from hitting Earth. Not all of it burns up before it breaks through. Therefore, the image on the right is showing you um, an example of space junk hitting Earth. There are so many flaws in all of these solutions, but we need to find the best realistic option to better improve our future and stabilize our orbits. Because we don't need pieces of space junk like this constantly falling and hitting our Earth's surface, causing our way of life to be disrupted. Here are the resources I used, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you for your time.